clicked on this video, chances are you're looking at a full-size pistol. The 320 and the Glock 45 are both really great options. They fit a lot of applications from carry all the way to competition. So let's go over all the features of both handguns and see which one ultimately I choose and which one's better for you. Before we get started, I'm really curious. Are you guys Team Sig or Team Glock? Drop a comment down below. I want to know which gun you guys are going to choose. This P320 is the 3.6-inch X compact slide sitting on an X full frame. This is a really good illustration of a full-size carry gun or a competition gun. Doesn't have too many accessories on it so that it's too heavy or too big, but it's just kind of the best do-all setup. As for the Glock, we are running the Glock 45. I like this gun a lot. It has the same slide as the Glock 19, but it has the same length as a 17 frame, so this holds 17 round magazines. This is a really cool setup because a lot of people prefer the longer frame of the gun, but don't want to have too long of a slide. In our case, it allows us to throw a compensator on it and reduce about 3/8 of an inch, which will put both of these guns almost identical in length and size. So it makes it a very easy comparison. When you're looking at any handgun, obviously reliability is at the utmost importance. Frankly, I think both guns are gonna have very similar reliability. I've had a few malfunctions with both guns over the thousands of rounds we put on it, and that's all been chalked up to ammo-related issues. However, the P320 did have some issues in the beginning, not being drop safe, potentially going off in holsters. However, Sig has said that all of those issues have been fixed. And frankly, I think they're pretty rare in the beginning. What's kind of nice about Glock is there's been no issues. They're good to go right out the gate. And frankly, Glock is known for its reliability. That is definitely a pro for the Glock. However, I really don't think it's going to be that much more reliable than the Sig, especially in 2024. When it comes to how these guns actually feel, the 320 is going to win it for me. I think it just has better ergonomics. It fits my hand a little bit better, especially the small grip module. I have relatively large hands and the small just feels better. The length of pull is almost perfect. The grip texture is really good, especially for concealed carry. It's aggressive enough that you can feel it, but not too aggressive that you can't carry it. The trigger pull is a little squishy and it is relatively short, but it's still pretty light and I have grown to like it a lot. And I actually think it's just a really good middle ground for a trigger. But when you look at the Glock, I prefer the grip texture on the Glock, especially on the 45. It's a little more aggressive than the Sig. However, when it comes to ergonomics on the Glock, I can feel every single corner on this frame. The underbite underneath this trigger guard is a little low and it kind of digs into my finger. With the Glock, there's not as bad of a hot spot on the beaver tail like I feel with the Sig. I'm a right-handed shooter, so I feel it right here on my thumb. It's kind of aggressive with the beaver tail. It's a little annoying, but it's not the worst in the world. With the Glock, you don't really have that. You kind of have it underneath the trigger guard here. It's kind of digging into my finger. And that's why when you see people stipple these guns, it's very common for them to go and remove some of the material right here. One small thing I've noticed with the Glock is the length of pull is a little bit shorter when the trigger breaks than the 320. For me, the 320 just has a better length of pull than the Glock. That's one of those things that is just more noticeable when you're shooting. If you're shooting really fast, you're trying to get faster follow-up shots, length of pull is one of those things you'll notice a lot more than ergonomics or grip texture. So I would give the 320 a win for the length of pull. However, I would give the Glock a win for the grip texture. It's just a little more aggressive. The 320 has multiple thousands of rounds through it, and this Glock 45 only has a couple hundred. So that's definitely gonna change the grip texture. Obviously, the 320 being held as much as it's been held is gonna be a little bit softer than a brand new frame. But in general, the Glock seems to be a little bit more aggressive, which would probably be better if you're looking for a full-size gun. It's probably gonna be a duty gun, and frankly, it's probably not gonna be touching your skin as much. So I would say that's a win for the Glock. When we're looking at the Glock trigger, I feel like it's kind of the bar for triggers. It's pretty good. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. We actually have an aftermarket Overwatch precision trigger in here. We're gonna be throwing in a lighter trigger bar for this trigger, which I think will help a lot. But a lot of the complaints around the Glock trigger are actually the trigger shoe. So if you're not a huge fan of the Glock trigger, that's another easy thing you can swap out. And you can put in a different trigger shoe. So if you're not a fan of the Glock trigger, it's a pretty easy fix. Another big thing that is noticeable when you're shooting is a mag release. Not only on how aggressive the mag falls free, but placement and size of the mag release. The Sig is definitely gonna win on this one. I think the size of the mag release in the Glock is pretty good. The spring is pretty good as well. However, it just doesn't fall freely, probably because it's a plastic mag. But also we are running a mag extension on the Sig. If we swap out to the standard mag on the Sig, it's going to be just as positive. So the Sig is gonna win when it comes to the mag extension. Again, very important if you're doing a reload for that mag to freely get out of the way. Can't tell you how many times I've been doing a reload with a Glock and I had to do the flip. Just adds time when you're shooting. And if this is gonna be a competition gun, you really wanna have the fastest setup you can have. So I would say the Sig's probably gonna end up being a little bit faster, unless you put maybe a mag extension on your mag for Glock, which depending on what competition you shoot, you may not be able to fit that in the required gauge, so keep that in mind. If you want a more aggressive grip texture for your P320, thankfully, there's a lot of options out there for you, which is actually a great segue to customization. I think these two guns start to really separate here, and the 320 really starts to stand out. A lot of that has to do with the FCU system. You can drop this trigger assembly into any polymer or aluminum frame for the 320 and really start building from there. A lot of people don't like using the term build, but essentially that's what you're doing. You're building something from the ground up with a bunch of manufactured parts to make it yours and to really build it out for what you want. Obviously, people are not going to probably be carrying these aluminum frames for a carry gun. You can do it if you want, but that's where this gun really shines. If you want to make it a carry gun, you can buy an aluminum frame, you can put tungsten weights in it, and you can make it a lot heavier, which is ultimately going to reduce a lot of recoil. With the Glock, you just can't do that. Even though you can put mag extensions, mag wells, heavy optics, heavy lights on it, it's still just going to be a little bit lighter than a built P320. And if your goal is competition, frankly, I would probably choose the 320. You're going to have more customization and you're going to be able to add more weight. It's just going to result in a lot less recoil. But going over some options for a 320 build, here we have an Icarus aluminum frame. This is a great option for competition. I'm the kind of person that likes to have one gun that does everything. So that's kind of what this build is. It's the smaller slide on a full-size frame. I chose to keep the plastic frame, that way when I carry this, it's not going to be too heavy. Frankly, what's adding most of the weight to this build is actually the TLR1 light. However, weapon lights are incredibly important if you're going to carry a handgun. What's also kind of cool is the takedown lever doubles as a thumb rest from Align Tactical, again allowing you to help fight some of that recoil. And in complete contrast, you could even choose a whole nother frame. If you even call this a frame, it's more of a chassis. Your FCU just drops down in here, and now you essentially have a little mini SMG setup or pistol caliber carbine setup. The Flux is a neat little setup that will allow you to run a larger optic and even a stock if you wanted to. This is very comfortable to shoot, and frankly, it's probably one of the better options out there if you're looking for a little sub-gun setup that you can just throw your 320 into. I actually made a full video on this if you guys want to check that out. It's a really cool setup. If you want more information, that video will be there. With all that being said, you can basically change every part on a 320 and really customize it to be yours. But going over to the Glock, there are some things you can do, and really I think the aftermarket accessories market was blown up because of Glock. There's a lot of companies making mag wells, mag extensions, triggers, comps, you name it, for Glock. And that's great. And I think if you're looking at a gun that you want to kind of keep it original and you really like the feel of Glock, then this is probably going to be a really good option for you. Even though you cannot remove the FCU out of this frame, there's a lot of things you can do to it. There's a lot of company making aftermarket slides for these. You can even send it out and get it stippled. That's something we had done to our Gen 4. And it definitely is going to improve the grip texture over the original. It's going to allow you to customize it just that much more. Although it's not going to be as customizable as the 320, there's still a ton of people making parts for this. You can still do a lot to it to make it your own. So obviously when you're looking at any handgun, price is going to be important. If you're looking at a stock X Compact 320, you're looking at around $699. Whereas if you look at a stock Glock 45 MOS, it's around $620. Not a huge difference in price. However, the 320 has a lot more customization that can be done, and that's going to add up really fast. So keep that in mind. If you have a bigger budget, the 320 is probably going to be more apt for you to spend that money fully customizing it out. Whereas the Glock kind of falls short, and there's not really a lot you can do it besides bolting on a few attachments. When you look at the quality of both these guns, they're pretty much on par. The polymer on the Sig, in my opinion, feels a little bit better. Feels a little more premium. Glock uses a proprietary polymer for this. It's definitely a very controversial thing. A lot of people call it a Tupperware gun. It does kind of feel like that. The plastic just feels a little cheap, but all the milling looks really nice on this. Everything feels pretty premium. I don't see too many glaring blemishes, so I don't think this can be very notable when you're comparing Glock versus Sig. Both guns hold up really well over time. Between all the Glocks I have and all the Sigs I have thousands of rounds on both manufacturers. Nothing's been breaking on either of them. I've gotten both very dirty and they both ran flawlessly. So that's something to keep in mind. As you can see, both these guns have Herrington Arms compensators on there. Both of them have optics. Both of them hold 17 rounds. So recoil. What does the recoil feel like? Well, the 320 has a little bit higher of a bore axis and therefore has a little bit more felt recoil. It's not very noticeable. And while I did notice the Glock, I could have a little bit faster follow-up shots. I still think I could do a lot more to the Sig to get it to have less recoil. I could throw this aluminum frame in there. I could throw some tungsten weights in the frame. I could throw a heavier weapon light on both guns and just get less recoil. So while the Glock had less recoil today at the range, I still think the Sig will have less recoil in general if I wanted it to. And it kind of comes down to what you want. If you want this to be a carry gun, the Glock's going to have less recoil because you're going to keep the polymer frame for both. If you want it to be a competition gun, you can throw this aluminum frame on here with a Surefire X300. And it's going to be an incredibly soft shooting handgun. On a side note, if you did throw a HT320XL on here, which is a dual port comp from Herrington Arms, you would have even less muzzle flip, making this a much softer shooting gun. However, it's a little bit longer, so I wanted to keep this 320 flat on here just to keep it as small as possible and to get it to be about the same exact size as the Glock 45. At the end of the day, you have to buy a gun that is best suited for your situation. If you do not intend on customizing the full-size gun you pick up, I would probably choose the Glock. It's gonna have a little bit less recoil. It's gonna be a little bit cheaper. However, if you intend on customizing the gun, I'd probably go with the 320. The customizations are pretty much limitless and you can change everything about it to make it exactly what you want. It's gonna cost a lot more money, but ultimately at the end, you can get exactly what you want. If you guys are interested in this build, check out this video right here and we'll go over all the details of the full build. If you guys like this video, we'd appreciate a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.